Hello and welcome to Nizam TV. This is Sultana from Washington, D.C. My today's guest is Dr. Babar Raza Khan. He's a writer and a speaker. His extensive background in the area of horse athletics as well as human athletics makes him very relevant for today's discussion, which is on coronavirus. He is also the author of the book on coronavirus, which is in publishing right now. Welcome, Dr. Khan. I'm gonna just say this, Dr. Babar Raza, you are uniquely qualified to talk on this topic of COVID-19. And the reason is that you have not only worked on human athletes, but as well as our four-legged friends, racehorses. That makes you in a very unique and amazing position to discuss this topic. So I am going to ask you questions, and I'm going to start with your book, because another important element of this whole scenario is that you have written on this topic. And I would ask you to tell us where this book is available or when this will be available, and who is your target audience, or do you believe who would mostly benefit from this book?
Well, let me first of all give you the idea that how the idea of this book was conceived.
Okay.
Actually, COVID-19 started in December 2019, and by 13th March 2020, it was declared pandemic in period of 3 months. Once it was declared pandemic, Canada was shut down, and all the government offices and the private businesses, everything was shut down, and we were locked in our homes. My history was that I was involved in research on coronavirus infections before. In 2012, it was another coronavirus infection. We call it Middle East Respiratory Syndrome. And that was in 2012 and 13. At that time, I was working as a chief veterinary consultant to Amir of Qatar. And I was involved in research on that. So once this infection started, being reported in scientific journals, we were reading it with a lot of interest, and there was a lot of confusion and lot of gaps in the knowledge because disease was evolving and it was a very dynamic state. One good thing our Canadian Prime Minister did, that once it was declared pandemic, Canadian Prime Minister took the lead and he invited all the people in Canada who are, involved in scientific and medical research. And then different teams were set up so that we can not only understand the disease, but we should create a consensus document out of the coming research so that our physicians can have something in their hand to start work on. And then through that, we should lead the world also. So my target which was assigned to me was that I have to go through all the scientific literature and the research being published in different research journals and try to create a consensus document out of that. So the book was actually, idea of this book came after all these documents were we analyzed and we went through it. And once the consensus document was created, and by now 1 year has passed, and the lot of things about this disease we understand now, right from the virology to the pathology of the disease to the chronic complications of it, and that to some extent treatment and vaccines. So it was a right time to put all this information in form of a book, so that not only the North America should get benefit, but the other countries of the world, especially third world countries, because they lack research facilities. So they should also get the benefit of this book. So this is how the idea of this book was generated.
Wonderful.
Now coming...
Okay. I'm gonna ask you $1 million question first,
okay.
which is this terrible pandemic. It took the whole world by surprise, not so much from your saying, but that's how people feel. And everybody wants to know in this world how, when we're gonna go back to normal, and obviously what it's gonna take. I'm gonna ask you all this sequentially, but however, the vaccinations and most importantly the root cause, where you come in as an expert, where you connect the dots for us in terms of from animal kingdom to human, how the transmittal happened and what were the lesson learned. But those are all the questions. But let's come back to the question. This, I mean, what's gonna take, and when we will go back to the normal life?
No, you have been, you have put all the questions together. So let me answer you one by one. Coming back to normal, the only way we can go back to normal is that we have, right now, the world population is about 8 billion people, 7.8 billion people. If we have to return back to normal, we have to get 80% of the world population vaccinated with it, so that we can create a herd immunity. It is a vicious cycle. As long as we do not create the herd immunity, the virus replication will not stop, because virus replication is associated with virus transmission. Once virus transfer from one person to other person, virus replicates. Once virus replicates, there is a chances of creation of new variants. When new variants come, they evade the immunity. And once your immunity is evaded, or if the vaccine can become ineffective, and once vaccine become ineffective, virus will not come under control. So it is the most important thing right now, as we are in the heart of this pandemic. What we have to do is we should maximize, speed up the vaccination on global level. And it is very, very important to understand that because the vaccine has been developed in developed world, in America and Canada and Europe, so of course they are trying to vaccinate their people first. But we should keep in mind that 60% of the world population is living in those areas of the world where there is right now not a proper system for vaccination. So even if, for example, we vaccinate the 80% of Americans or Canadians or Europeans, the global vaccination or the global herd immunity will not be created. For example, Americans are 330 million people. They are just 4% of the world population. And the whole world is connected through global connectivity. We are living in one global village. So ultimately, even if we vaccinate, the new variants will be developing in the other parts of the world, and these variants will ultimately reach to America. And then the whole vaccination, what we have done, will fail again. So it is very, very important to do the vaccination on global level with this thought in our mind that we have to knock down this virus on global level, and only then we can contain the virus. Right now, a phenomena is we are seeing, we call it in social sciences, a global patriotism or global nationalism, the vaccine nationalism, or the vaccine, patriotism. This is that these countries are vaccinating their people first with this thought that probably they can save their people. But this whole exercise will end up into waste, because we will not able to isolate any developed country's population from the other world population, because the world is connected. We have a global connectivity. People are traveling. That's how the disease came from China. It started there, and within weeks, it spread all over the world. So again, new variants will come back. So it is very important that there is a very famous saying of DG of WHO, World Health Organization. He said, we will swim or sink together. There is no other choice. So it is better we should effort collectively on the global level to contain this virus, and only then we can come back to normal.
As far as the root cause is concerned, we know that it spread out of birds or animals or bats, whatever. I mean, would you shed that light? Is it relevant today to learn that kind of connection of these species with the interaction with humans? how they have to be careful dealing with these phenomena in the future, or is a genie out of the bottle? I mean, it doesn't even matter anymore. I mean, why don't we
It is
talk
a
about
it's a
going
very
forward?
relevant question, and
Yes.
it is actually to us, COVID-19 is not a surprise.
Mhm.
We were expecting it, and I'd say very sad thing to say, but I will be very honest. It is not the end. You should expect anytime another pandemic in the coming years, and we call that supposedly pandemic X, which is in waiting. The reason is that we have encroached on the wildlife habitat. Bird population has increased, lot of pollution has happened, their habitat has been destroyed, and because of that our contact with the wildlife has increased. And this contact with the wildlife has increased on many levels. People have started keeping exotic animals as pets, which should not be done. The smuggling of the animals of the endangered species have increased, which has another reason for spreading the infections. Now, coming to COVID-19, this infection came from the bat. From the bat, and the transfer was to another animal. We call it pangolin, which is a delicacy in the Far East. People eat it, although it is an endangered species. And the Wuhan city, where this problem started, there was a wet market, market where they are bringing live animals and they are slaughtering. Close to that, there is a food restaurants, people eat there. And the infection was transmitted from the bat to the pangolin, and then it spilled over from pangolin to human being. And this is not the only case. In case of MERS, the intermediate animal was again it was camel. Before that, SARS came, another coronavirus infection in 2001 and 2003. And at that time, it was a civet cat, or it is a mammal, which is again wild animal. So basically, what we have to do is we have to fix the problem, that we have to decrease our contact with the wildlife. Their habitat has to be re-established, and we should stop the smuggling of these animals. And another thing which is very important in the developed world, like in America and Canada and Europe, we have a very, very well developed department. We call it veterinary public health. So we have the veterinary experts of the infectious diseases, which can guide you how to stop the transmission of the infection from the animals to the human being. And if such infection happens and the pandemic happens, then what we should immediately do, what should be the countersurgency plan there. In as long as we do not develop the veterinary public health experts who can guide us, this threat of transmission of the infection from the animal to the human being will be there. We call them zoonotic diseases, when a disease transfer from animal to human side. And this is not the only one. As I told you, we are expecting another, we call them emerging and re-emerging viral diseases and infectious diseases. So for example, tuberculosis has come back, which was under control. It has come back again to the world. Similarly, many other viral infections are in waiting. There's another disease, we call it brucellosis, which is transferred from the dairy animals to human beings. It has re-emerged. So many diseases are re-emerging because we are not having these experts. And in the third world, for example, if you talk of Pakistan or India, they even right now not have even the concept of it. We call this one health policy. One health policy means that you have to correct the environment. Once your environment is healthy, your animals will be healthy. Once your animals are healthy, your human being will be healthy, because our food source is coming from our animals. Animals are integral part of our homes as our pets. Animals are integral part of the various sports like horse racing, from where I belong. So there is a complete, they are part of our integral life. as long as our animals are not healthy, there is no question of human being in healthy condition. So whole this phenomena we call One Health policy. United Nations WHO department is strongly recommending it. My book has been, read by the DG of WHO, and he has written a letter, and he has specially mentioned it, that it is a great achievement that the first book has come from a veterinary consultant, because that is where the problem lies, that we have to fix the uh, animal health before we can fix the human health. And this thing is very, very important to understand.
Absolutely important. Yeah. Which brings me to another question regarding that, the third word we're talking about, or the developing world, as we call it. So people, the behavior about people, generally speaking, in that part of the world, for example, in Pakistan, I was there and I was talking to people, and on the ground reality, for example, there appears to be lack of seriousness regarding COVID-19. Many people tend to believe is a hoax, for example. They don't take it seriously in terms of SOPs, they call them, or social distancing or mask wearing. It is, don't take me wrong, if you go to establishments, institutions, it is fully implemented. And the government has done an amazing job to implement it. But people on their own, there's a lack of seriousness. What do you think about that?
Let me tell you, this is a very important question again, and many people have asked my opinion on that.
And also very quickly, which I missed out, was there appears to be, however, less number of infections, fewer. As
I will address all the areas of this question. This is a very, very important thing. Number one thing is, let's start with the government's behavior there. Government has done, keeping in view their economic situation and their capacity, they have done good job. They have tried their level best to control the disease, keeping in view their resources. But let's talk why this is, because there are a lot of gaps and areas where government has actually failed. For example, right from the beginning of this infection, there has been a misuse of media, because everybody is right now using social media, and everybody is using what we call civic journalism. So people have the forums like YouTube, Facebook or Twitter, and everybody is uploading anything, whatever comes to his or her mind, without confirming anything, and everybody has become a scientist there. And the result is that so much misinformation has been fed, not only about the disease, as you are saying, they don't believe it is a viral disease. They think that it is all a conspiracy. And then many conspiracy theories have been concocted, and they have been on the media. And many people are doing it for their own, personal agenda. And many people are then transferring it, and they are sharing it. And this is how it has been mishandled and I believe that the social media is one of the area which government has no control on it, and this has played a major role in spreading the rumors about this disease. Now, coming to the second aspect of the right from the very beginning, from the top, the place where you are sitting, from there, the ineptitude which was shown by the government in America, they mishandled it. It was unfortunately politicized there. And because America is a leading example for the other countries, once it was mishandled there, and this is one of the reasons that America, shamelessly failed in controlling this disease, in spite of it, all the best brains and the human and the material resources, they didn't do well. This was because of the indecisiveness and ineptitude at the level of the government of America. And that was portrayed in the third world, because that is what they were copying. Now, coming back, why the disease has been not that much, the lethal in third world or developing countries, like, for example, in Pakistan, one of the main reasons is that they do not have done proper testing. Even if they do proper testing, you will be surprised. Thousands and thousands of people were positive and they didn't do the proper testing, so they never have a proper data. Other thing is that this disease always comes in especially those people, virus is more lethal, which have comorbidities, we call them. Like, for example, if you are obese, if you are hypertensive, if you are diabetic, and if you have any heart ailment, these are the areas in which the disease is showing more lethality. Now, the comorbidities are related to the age. In Canada and America, we have more aging population because our average life is more. As compared to that, in Pakistan and India, in the developing world, people's life expectancy is not much. So you don't have many aging people or aging population in those countries. Another factor which was because exposure of infection is huge there, and the people's immune system is always geared up because the environment is not clean. The people have more exposure to various types of infection around. And another last factor which we see in scientific world was that they are still vaccinating their population with those vaccines which we in the first world know since 1950s. For example, measles and mumps and rubella. These vaccines and the BCG vaccine against tuberculosis, it was last done in 1950s or 60s in America and Canada, because these diseases don't exist anymore in this part of the world. Because they were doing these vaccinations, their immune system was probably better geared up because their exposure to infection was more. This was one reason they have less lethality. But I personally believe that it was the main problem that they never did proper testing. For example, they have not done even 1% of their population proper testing. Whereas in Canada, we have done more than 35% of the population has been tested. And forget about genetic sequencing. Genetic sequencing is where we identify the virus and the variant. In Canada, we have done about 10% population genetic sequencing, same as in America. In Denmark, for example, they did 35%. Australia did 100% genetic sequencing. Iceland did 100% genetic sequencing. In Pakistan, general testing is not more than 1% of the population. This is the reason they do not have the exact figure. And last thing about this, because this disease, primarily it is a disease of respiratory tract, but once the virus gets in, the receptor of this virus is in the blood vessels, your capillaries, arteries, your heart muscles, your kidneys, brain tissue, gastrointestinal system, reproductive organs, skin. So many times people were dying there with heart failure, but actually the cause was COVID infection. Similarly, people were dying there with the kidney failure, and the cause was the COVID infection. But because they do not have a system, so they have absolutely not even 1% data available to them. That's why they are living in, dark, that they think that infection is not there. Infection, if you start proper scientific testing and genetic sequencing, it is, I personally feel that probably huge number of will come which are positive. And that is the reason infection is not coming under control, because people are not testing. And as you said, people are not observing social behavior. They are not maintaining social distancing. They are not wearing masks. They are not sanitizing. They are having political rallies. They are having political, these crowds and all this. And the leaders are standing among them without masks. What sort of example you are setting for the people?
Right.
So these are the reasons.
One question comes to mind is that people who suffer the most ultimately due to the behaviors of others, and apparently people have this feeling that they are not seeing the demise, the deaths. Okay, the argument also there is, oh, we don't see any deaths. I mean, many people of of the argument. And in the villages, there is no way of tracking people. For example, there is no data. If people are dying and they are attributed to different other diseases, for example, and is it possible that they are not being recorded as COVID, but they are actually COVID?
That is the exact reason.
That is the
People
exact
are
reason.
dying with, for example, when COVID enters into your blood vessels, it causes the receptor of the virus, we call it ACE2. Your blood vessels have ample amount of this receptor. Once it is attaches there, it start eroding the internal lining of the blood vessels. Once they start eroding, clotting starts in the blood vessels. Once the clotting start, then wherever blood clots, your those systems start failing. For example, if it stop, if the clot is formed in your, say, for example, coronary arteries, person will suffer from heart attack. If they form in your carotid arteries, which are leading to brain, person will suffer from stroke. If it is causing in the pulmonary arteries, people will die with respiratory complications. So people have been dying there with variable deaths, and because there is no system there to diagnose and no system to record, and that is actually very scary situation. Because if a person is in the, say for example, in cardiology unit, and person is dying with heart failure apparently, but person was positive for COVID infection, and all the doctors and staff and the people around him, they are not wearing masks, and they were handling that patient, you can well imagine how much infection would be transferred. Then these people will go out and they will transfer the infection. One special feature of this virus is it has exponential growth. It transfers from 1 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 16, 16 to 64. So it multiplies very, very quickly. And this is the reason that their people are dying so-called with other diseases. But I can assure you that if you do proper testing, like we have done in Canada, you will be surprised what number comes out of that testing. Millions and millions of people will be positive there.
But there is some reluctance on the part of the government initially to test people with milder symptoms, or the government were not in too much rush to. There was so much pressure on the hospitals, and many people who showed symptoms, at least they believed.
Government was trying to not do maximum testing. It is very understandable because they do not have the basic health infrastructure where they can handle the people. So they were trying to reduce or minimize the number of cases so that the load on the hospitals does not increase. But at the same time, when you don't do testing and you have such a congested population, we are there, more than 230 million people there. So when people are ultimately not wearing masks and they are in not social distances not being observed, so transfer of infection there is huge. And the main problem is that test is very expensive there, keeping in view the economical situation of the people. So people were not doing tests out of the economical situation, and then the diagnostic kits which they were using, they were of very poor quality. They came and they were not of very, because as the virus replication happens and as the new variants come, we have to modify our kits also. Many a time it happens, for example, the first strain when came in UK, B117, we call it, when this strain came, the first thing which we noticed in Pakistan, that the diagnostic kits, they failed to diagnose it because virus has changed genetically. So this is a teamwork that you have to modify the diagnostic kits as well according to the new variants, because the kits which they got, they were of very poor quality and tests were expensive. It was done in private sector. Government has no quality control on it, and government was not doing test itself. So this was the reason that you have never ever gained the correct data of Pakistan, or
so the
for
people,
that matter,
people who were infected and recovered and never knew or had milder symptoms and then they recovered, what are the concerns in terms of their in long-term effects on them? Are they equal for everyone, or there is a way to measure who
No, let me tell you
There
that
should be a
yeah,
concern about it.
it is. It's right now the main problem is that when somebody picks up the infection, once you become infected, and if you are not diagnosed and you are of course not treated, the fate of this person can be in two ways. One is that your body will try to fight the infection, and it is possible that you might, your body's immune system knocks
Oh,
down the virus and you come
right.
over and you come out of the clinical symptoms and you recover. But the main problem is that these people who have recovered, they will become ultimately the transmitters of the virus, because once virus is knocked down, virus is still in your body. So virus is being excreted in your breath, virus is being excreted while you are talking, and the life of the virus is long. For example, if somebody sneezes out or coughs out virus and virus falls on a wood table or a laptop or a telephone surface, this virus stays there alive for 2 to 3 days, and the other person will come, that person will touch that surface, and then you touch your hand which you have touched on that surface, that you touch with your face, with your eyes or nose, the virus will be transmitted. This is the main problem. That's why even those people who have recovered and those who have vaccinated, we always advise them, never leave the mask, always wear the mask, always maintain social distance, because you can become a chronic transmitter of the infection.
Okay, good advice. With that, we are reaching near the end. And before we run out of time, I'd like to thank you very much to contribute your absolutely priceless and valuable knowledge and be help to millions and millions of people.
It was my
So,
pleasure to talk to you, and I'm thankful to
and
your
please,
channel.
you would be invited again, and please be always spare some time for us.
Sure, I will love to do that, and I'm very, thankful to your channel and your time also, because it is very important to convey the information to the public, because
Absolutely.
people are not understanding the severity of the disease. And as I told you, as long as we do not vaccinate 80% of the world population, our social life will never come back to normal. And world economy has melted down. I will give you the latest Bloomberg's figure of day before yesterday. $3.8 trillion it has caused to the world economy up till now. Millions and millions of jobs have been lost. People's mental health has been affected.
Absolutely.
Social fabric of our societies is breaking up. This pandemic is attacking each and every aspect of human life. So it is very, very important that we must transmit this information to people, and we should play our role so that we can reach to the 80% global vaccination as soon as possible. We can knock down the virus so that our life can start again back to normal. So this is very
Yes.
important, and I appreciate your contribution in this effort. It was a pleasure
Absolutely.
to talk to you.
Thank you very much. Same here.
Thank you.
That's all for today. We'll meet you again with new personalities and new events. Goodbye.
सुल्तान मोबाइल होलसेल डीलर, मेन हॉल रोड, लाहौर। तमाम मोबाइल की वैरायटी दस्तियाब है। एड्रेस 3 मेन हॉल रोड, लाहौर। चेयरमैन चौधरी बिलावल। मोबाइल नंबर 032249655565। फोन नंबर 042373111846। सऊदी अरब रियाज भत्ता नज केरला मार्केट सफा मक्का अस्पताल के करीब हशाम ओकला फार्मेसी आपकी खिदमत में पेश हर किस्म की म्यारी मेडिसिन पर 10% डिस्काउंट हासिल कीजिए। राब्ते के लिए 27665556। बेहतरीन मेडिसिन का मरकज।